All right, welcome to the YouTube channel, and let's get started with chapter 1.1. It's expressions and formulas, so this is really going to be a review for you, but I want you to pay very close attention to vocabulary, okay, so it's really important. So let's start with expressions, okay? An expression contains at least one variable, okay? An array, just a list of numbers, operations, and variables. It has to have one variable to be called an expression. But what I really want to get at is the difference between an expression versus what we would call an equation. Think about what the difference is between those two things. And we'll list a few of them here. Alright, like we said, an expression is going to have at least a variable. But what it doesn't have, okay, is it does not have an equal sign. Where an equation does have an equal sign. So that's a fundamental difference there, okay? And with that fundamental difference, there's different types of things we do with these things. When you have an expression, what do you do with it? Well, you can simplify it, okay, and put it in its simplest form, and we'll talk about what that is. And you can evaluate it if all the variables are known, or if there's no unknown variables. Okay, so those two things you can do to an expression. What can you do with an equation? Well, of course, then you can solve it. Okay, so that's a very fundamental difference between them. So let's not get those confused. Okay, we're going to start with evaluating expressions. So we have to know what all the variables, what their values are in order to do that. And once you have those values, then you can simply use order of operations. So we need to know the order of operations, and this is straightforward order of ops, and we use PEMDAS. And let's talk about PEMDAS very carefully, because of course it's vitally important you get this right every time. All right, what does parentheses? The P stands for parentheses, but what it really means is grouping symbols. And parentheses just happens to be one of them. So we ought to go ahead and list what the other grouping symbols are. Start with parentheses. But there's, of course, brackets, which would be squares compared to round parentheses. And then there's things called braces, which are squigglies. Okay? Yours are probably better than mine. But there's other grouping symbols that you don't often think about. Did you know that a fraction bar is also a grouping symbol? And that's important, okay? And that's going to come up now a lot. The other thing that's a grouping symbol that you don't think about very often is the absolute value symbol. So if you have an absolute value, you want to do what's inside first. Okay, that's part of your order of operations. All right, then of course you have exponents. If there are any exponents, you want to make sure you're doing that first. So if you're going to have to square it or cube it or raise it to the fourth power, anything like that, that of course will happen next. The next two things are interesting because they go together. We list M and then the D, but that's not really in order. M and D go together, multiplication and division go together, but you have to do them left to right. You knew this, right? Alright, just making sure. And then, of course, the last one is the same idea. Addition and subtraction, left to right. You don't do addition before subtraction. You do whichever one comes left and then the right. Left to right. So I'll do an example for you. Okay, let's run through this example. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and make the substitution. I'm a strong believer in always do substitutions first. Don't try to do any work yet. You got to get the substitution right before you can do anything. So let's just do this. 8, I'm going to put a 5 for x. And for y, particularly because it's a negative number, I'm going to use a parentheses, okay? I also put the 5 in a parentheses to be super safe, because I didn't want to lose, if I used just a dot for multiplication, I might have lost that dot. Sometimes they're not dark enough, heavy enough, and then it becomes an 85, which of course is terribly wrong. So substitutions, it's a very good idea to use your parentheses. I always say parentheses are your friend. It doesn't seem to get us anywhere, but you should believe that. All right, and then we're going to add the z cubed. It's a negative, so make sure it's in a parentheses, and then you cube it. So what's interesting is you're cubing that entire number, the -1, okay? Not just the 1. So, okay, then we're going to take the division bar. Remember, that's a grouping symbol. We're going to make a substitution for y, -2 again. Make sure that's grouped so that I can square it. That entire thing gets squared, making that substitution plus 5. Alright, so now let's see what we can do with our order of operations. I really don't have much to do inside my parentheses, okay? But I do have a fraction bar, which is a parentheses, so I ought to do imagine then, you could imagine that this is in a grouping symbol, and this is in another grouping symbol. So I kind of have to do everything that's within each one of those brackets separately. Alright, let's work on the top one. On the top, I've got an exponent to take care of. So I guess I could do that. 8, 5, -2. Of course, there are some shortcuts once you get in the hang of this. But what is a -1 cubed? -1 times -1 times -1 has 3 negative symbols, so it's all going to come out to be negative. So still plus a -1. And since I'm adding a negative number, I'm going to use a parentheses for it. And then I'm going to divide, and on the bottom I have to square a -2. Because the negative is inside the parentheses, due to the substitution, it's also getting squared. It's a -2 times a -2. That makes it a +4. That's something we really want to make sure we understand, and we can do that consistently every time. It's a big common error. So when you're squaring that negative, make sure you turn it positive. Any of those even powers. Okay, so there's your 4 plus 5. Alright, so let's do this. Let's go to the next step. And let's see, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division. I don't have any division, so that really doesn't happen, but it would have been interesting. I wish I'd have done that, but let's go left to right. 8 times 5 is 40. 40 times a -2 is a -80. And then plus a negative number is the same as subtracting a positive number. And then I'll do what's on the bottom. 4 plus 5 is 9. So if I can, I'm going to go ahead and finish this problem over on the bottom. And now on the top I have to just add -81 over 9 and get my -9. There you have it. Okay, I'm going to have a problem here for you to try, and I just want to remind you for a homework check, I'll be looking to make sure you've taken notes on the lecture and that you have written down and completed the U-Try problem. So that'll be how we check your homework. So for this problem, we just want you to do another evaluate. Let's see, let's go w minus 2x plus y divided by 2, and I'll let you know w is -3, x is 4, y is 2.6, z 1/3. Alright, so you're going to have to be pretty good with fractions, decimals, and all those good things too. Give it a try, and I'll show you the answer in a minute. So you're going to need to pause this video right now. Pause it. Come back when you're done. Okay, the answer is -9.7. If you got it, that's great. You can go on to the next slide. Otherwise, here's the solution for you. If w is a -3, I'm going to go ahead and make that substitution. Minus 2 times the x value is a 4, and then I have plus the y value is a 2.6, and that's going to be divided by 2. Didn't need the z. That's good. You don't have to do the fraction. So let's work this out. As far as PEMDAS goes, I don't have anything to do within my parentheses. I don't have any exponents, so I'm going to look at multiplication and division. I do have some multiplication here, and I have a division here. So let's do the negative 3. 2 times 4 is 8. It stays negative. Plus, now I have a 2.6 divided by 2, which is a 1.3. It's pretty simple. Okay, now I have to do addition and subtraction. It's very important that we do this left to right. So let's do these really carefully. Negative 3, minus 8, minus 11. I'll even just stop right there for you on this one. And then I'll have to add a negative 11 plus a 1.3. And of course, oh, that's going to be actually kind of tricky. What is that, 9.7? Negative 9.7, yeah. Okay. Got it.